Kicking off the week with a very special guest. It's Chris Kluwe here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to my hashtag everydayers for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Today on the show, the entire show is going to be an interview with former Viking Chris Kluwe, who's been in the headlines recently. Well, I'll let him tell you about it. But before I get into that, so Chris Kluwe is a very politically outspoken figure, and the listeners of Locked On Vikings run the whole gamut of political opinions. So I wanted to start with a little quick aside. If you are the kind of person that does not agree with Chris Kluwe, you're going to hear some political opinions you do not agree with. If that's something that you can't handle, the first segment is where we talk about that, and then it's all about like punting and old reminiscing. There's a phenomenal story at the end, so even if you just do that, just go skip to the end and listen to that. There's a phenomenal story about when the roof collapsed because Kluwe was on the team at the time. So we'll get into all of that. But I implore you, however you feel about Chris Kluwe and his political leanings, I'll call them, I think it's really important to have the conversation anyways about where like a public figure's responsibility lies to do what they think is right and where it does not lie to do that. And that's really what the crux of the conversation that we had is. So I implore you to give it a shot. And if you hear a political opinion that you don't like, well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So with that out of the way, here is Chris Kluwe. All right, everybody. I am here with a very special guest, Chris Kluwe, former Vikings punter, current, I don't know what you call yourself now, pariah of the state.
Yeah, enemy of the state / stay-at-home dad. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, okay, yeah, perfect. Is that what you've been up to lately? Just stay-at-home dad, doing your thing? Playing a lot of World of Warcraft, maybe?
Yeah, so I haven't played World of Warcraft since Cataclysm, because once we had kids, I needed games that I could pause, and hardcore rating is not really
fair enough.
a game you can pause. But my wife works. I stay at home, take care of the kids, make sure they get to their activities, and was enjoying a peaceful and quiet retirement.
So let's get to the elephant in the room right away. You were in the news lately. For those who are unfamiliar or just, because you are a former member of the team that this show covers, the floor is yours. What happened there? What's the deal?
Yeah, so I have been in the news lately due to my act of peaceful civil disobedience in front of the Huntington Beach City Council. They have been trying to mess with our public library for at least, I think, 2.5 years now. It started with a proposed book ban on a bunch of books in the children's section, all of which dealt with LGBTQ plus issues. Then it shifted into we're going to have a panel that will review the content of books in the libraries, and all the nasty books, will go in their own special little section. And everyone was like, well, that's just a book ban. Like you're just trying to go about it a different way. So the community, we started a petition, got over, I think it was like 15 or 16,000 signatures to bring it to a ballot, which is well over what we needed. Then the city council decided, now we're going to try to privatize the library. And so the community was like, that's not cool. There's nothing wrong with the way the library's been run. We clearly see that you're still trying to mess with the library. So a second petition was formed. That one got over 16,000 signatures, well more than was needed to put it to a ballot measure. And then the latest thing was this plaque that they wanted to put on the front of the library, which was ostensibly to celebrate the library's 50th anniversary. But the plaque prominently displayed a MAGA acrostic in the largest font size on the plaque. The library's name was in the smallest font size on the plaque. That tells you what their priorities were. So anyways, at that point, I was just like, okay, clearly these people aren't listening. Clearly they don't care about what's best for Huntington Beach and the community as a whole, because a library is supposed to be apolitical, right? Like it's supposed to be a place where anyone can come in. It's a welcoming place with books and knowledge, and whatever you want to check out, you go in, you go read at the library. I mean, that's the definition of a public library. And so I was like, okay, well, if they don't want to listen, like I really want them to understand how important this is. And also what I'm seeing from our city council mirrors a lot of what I'm seeing at the national level, which I went through in my speech. I'm sure you can find a copy of it online.
Yeah. You can definitely find like the whole thing, although the singular clip that went viral that was actually like so how did that go? How did that go down? How did like a speech to city council turn into it had to be an act of peaceful civil disobedience and suddenly you're on the ground?
Yeah, so for me, I took a lot of inspiration from the 1960s civil rights movement, right? Where acts of peaceful civil disobedience was a really effective way to get the population aware, kind of like of how much this meant. Protests against the Vietnam War, Kent State, like that's obviously a very tragic moment in our history, but also one where this was peaceful civil disobedience, and then the National Guard shot students, like they killed them. And so it was really something that I felt was necessary at this time. And the other reason why I felt it was necessary is because it's what I want our elected democratic officials to be doing, and they haven't been doing it.
Is there an imperative as somebody, as a public figure, or as public a figure as you are, to make those kinds of things? Or like, how do you compare that to the idea of just, trying to make an impact in your local community and it really being about the library instead of symbolic of all these other things going on in the nation at large? And
right.
Like doing it quietly,
Yeah, no, I think that is a really important point, because and that is something I want people to know, that like what I did was an individual act, but there are so many other people out there organizing, right? Doing the hard work, putting together the local communities, showing up to protest at City Hall, showing up at their city council meetings. And this wasn't my first city council meeting I've attended. Like I've been going to these city council meetings for a while now, because our city council has some problems. And I believe that like this starts at home. Like this is something where you can't really walk the walk unless you're showing up to your local political events and knowing what's going on in your community. And so I encourage anyone who's listening, like, show up to your city council events. Find out what your local government is doing, because that's what's going to affect you in your day-to-day life. Like that is the most pertinent thing to you as an individual. That being said, yeah, absolutely. Like as someone who has a name, especially as someone who has gotten a name for protesting before and speaking out on social issues, I'm sure that did a lot towards raising the sort of the highlightedness of the story, right? Because it's one thing to say, local Huntington Beach resident gets arrested in front of city council. It's another thing to say former ex-NFL player.
Yeah, right. Well, and with a history like yours, because I probably don't have to point out, but I will anyways, that if this was a fight that started because of LGBTQ plus books, well,
yeah, that's right.
12, 13 years ago, there was a thing with Mike Pereira and the whole deal. So it's a history there too, which makes you, either the most appropriate guy for the job or the one that's going to get the hardest eye roll, depending on how you feel about that issue.
Right. Exactly. And then, well, and that's also something where it is like, I recognize that I do have a lot of privilege, right? Like, not only am I a former ex-NFL player, like I am also a straight white guy. Like that gives me a lot of room to do stuff that a lot of other people who want to protest may not necessarily have. Like I'm under no illusions that if I was a Black trans woman and I did the exact same thing, I would not have been treated in the same way. Like this would not, we would not probably not be having this conversation, and I'd probably still be in jail right now. So, but what I think that shows is that those of us who do have that privilege, who do have that power, like, it is on us to be the ones on the front line and telling people, hey, this is important, right? Like, we have the platform, we have the megaphone, we need to be the ones leading people and showing them that, this isn't even really a right versus left fight anymore. This is do you want to live in America or do you want to live in something else?
Yeah. And I mean, we could go off on a huge tangent on that. That would be a different podcast. This is Locked On Vikings. So I do actually want to get into a couple of Vikingsy things with you now that
Sure.
we've kind of gotten the current events out of the way, because I'm curious
Right
to
from
see what you think
scratch.
about where the team is right now. Yeah, right. You're probably wondering how I got on this topic. But I would love to hear your thoughts about where the Vikings are, and also maybe just, talk about the old days a little bit. It's always fun to reminisce. I love hearing some of the funny stories that people can tell once they've been out of the league for a couple years and they
Right.
can't get in trouble anymore. So I'm going to put you on the spot. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout any game. So if you want to, say, pop into an NBA game, but the tip-off already happened, you didn't quite get your bet in time, it's no worries. Just make the same bet as a live bet. The lines are probably going to be similar. Or if they have moved, it's because of what has happened in the game so far, and you're still on the same track. So whether you want to just quick sneak one in right after tip-off, or if you're trying to bet on a fourth quarter comeback or on somebody getting a clutch 3 in the fourth quarter and you're looking for that, whatever it is, you can find it at FanDuel alongside live updating stats, scores, and everything you need to make a good decision. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving right along here on the Locked On Vikings podcast, I got Chris Kluwe here on the show, having a good time. We haven't talked really much about football, so let's try doing that. I imagine that you are paying at least some attention to the NFL and where the Vikings are at, J.J. McCarthy, Sam Darnold. But I guess here's a question. Who do you watch on TV? You're in Huntington Beach. Does that make you a Los Angeles team fan, or are you still watching the Vikings, or are you still watching the Raiders or whatever?
Yeah, so I'll occasionally tune into Vikings games, and I really do have a soft spot in my heart for the franchise. I really hope they win a Super Bowl at some point because the fans need it.
Bad. Yeah. Oh, it's getting bad over here. We need it real. Right? Yeah, it's starting to hurt.
I really would like to see the Vikings win one before I die, let alone before some of the hardcore fans die.
Yeah, which will be next week. I don't know.
Right? Yeah, I know. Who knows? But yeah, it's. I will say one thing about the Vikings: they are a team that, however we find a way to lose, it's always going to be what was that? How is that even possible? And so yeah, no, I thought this last season actually it shows that the team has a lot of really good bones to it, right? There's a lot to build on there, and I think Sam Darnold had a really good bridge year for the team, but I don't think he's the answer at quarterback, and I think the team knows he's not the answer at the quarterback. But I also think he did well enough, that he should get paid by someone else. Now, unfortunately,
yeah. So that's the move that they're doing. It sounds
right, yeah, for sure.
Depending on who you listen to, the local beat thinks that has kind of said don't expect a trade, don't expect a tag in trade or a tag at all, and the national beat is still leaving it kind of open ended. But here's the other thing too. I don't know how things are going to be when this airs, because I don't know if this is going to necessarily air right after we recorded it. Gotcha. But it'll be sometime over the course of the week. But the tag deadline may have already gone by the time people listen to this, so we'll know by then.
I can't see them tagging him. It's they clearly they want to see what J.J. McCarthy has. That is going to be their quarterback for the future. And I think having a year, even though he got injured, having a year to just kind of be in practice to pick up the speed of the game, that goes a long way towards building a quarterback's confidence. You look at Aaron Rodgers, right? He sat behind Brett Favre for I think 3 years, something like that. And again, one of the hardest things to adjust to in the NFL, especially at the quarterback position, is the speed of the game. In college, you can be the guy out there, and maybe there's 3 or 4 other the guys out there. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, everyone is the guy out there.
and if you're at quarterback, if you're the guy, you can run around forever and nobody can catch you. And you can just sit back there. There are some Cam Ward reps. And last year, very famously, Caleb Williams did that a ton. And was a real quick
wake
wake-up call for Caleb Williams that first game. He tried to do it, runs back, takes a 19-yard sack, and it's like, okay, well.
Right? So
you
I
can't do that
remember when I was playing at UCLA, so I was the holder, I dropped an extra point attempt, and I rolled out, because normally you make the fire call, and then you want to pass it to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I did, I was like, if I had just sprinted for the pylon, I would have made it, right? Because I was still fast enough that, I could have beat them to the edge and actually gotten in the end zone. And then my very first hold, actually, it was in
you Tony Romo'd it.
Yeah. Oh, Tony Romo, it was on Monday Night Football. So I dropped it, and in my head, I'm thinking, just go for the pylon, right? Just go.
Oh.
I got closed out immediately.
I do remember that. I was a kid. I would have been 14 years old when that happened. And I remember that because I remember when Tony Romo did it, feeling a sense of relief, because it was later that year, I think, feeling a sense of relief, being like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. They're never going to talk about Kluwe's again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And obviously I went on from that. Didn't really have issues with holding from that point forward. But I remember just how quickly the linebacker closed me down. And as I saw a gap, and then it just wasn't there anymore. And that's the speed that you have to get used to at the NFL level. It just happens so much quicker.
So how do you feel about JJ McCarthy? I don't know how much college ball you watch, but of course the reputation is that, the Michigan ran it so much. JJ McCarthy must have some issue, but he looked good when he did throw. And a lot of times that was bailing them out of third downs that they got because they went run, pass. And so I've been a big defender of his. I've liked him a lot. I liked him before they even drafted him. So I got pretty excited about it, but where are you at?
So I don't watch college football, so I can't
Fair enough.
professionally on that matter. What I will say is the question is going to be, can he adapt to the speed at the NFL level? Because there's been a lot of really good quarterbacks in college who can't adapt to the speed in the NFL. And there's been some mediocre college quarterbacks who did adapt to the speed in the NFL, right? Like Tom Brady would probably be the prime example of that. He came out as a 6th round draft pick. And there's been multiple other guys who've come out as later round picks. Patrick Mahomes is another one. I think he went in the 3rd round or something like that.
No, he was 10th overall.
Mahomes? Was he?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or something like that.
That shows you how much I pay attention to the draft. but yeah, no, there are a bunch of guys.
Brock Purdy. There's your
right. Yeah, Brock
example.
Purdy. Very good. There's an example. Yeah. It's about how you play when the lights go on. Right. Because I've also played with guys who are practice squad all-stars. They show up Wednesday through Saturday and you're just like, damn, this guy looks really good out on the field. And then you get to Sunday and it's like, where'd he go? So again, it's the only thing that matters is what you do when the lights come on. And, some guys have it, some guys don't. So in the case of JJ McCarthy, all I'm going to say is we have to wait and see what happens, when he's actually in those situations, because that really is the only test that matters.
I'd be remiss if I didn't make you put on the punter hat a little bit. The Vikings actually have a decision at the position right now. They have Ryan Wright. He's a restricted free agent. The original round tender would be about $3 million, which is in this cap environment kind of nothing, as it always is. Right. But it kind of allows them an opportunity to rethink, hey, are we happy with this guy? Are we bringing in competition? What are we doing? So how do you feel about how Ryan Wright is done, and what kind of opportunities has he earned with the Vikings?
Yeah, so from what I've seen from him, he has hang time issues. So I wouldn't be surprised for them not to tag him or, give him a long-term deal. I would expect a training camp battle on that front, where they'll probably try to bring in either an undrafted free agent or a late round pick. And it'll be an actual competition for the spot. He'll have the edge because he's the incumbent, but I think it will be okay, you've got to earn your spot, right? And then, if he does do well, then they'll probably look at a longer term deal. But from everything I've seen from how he hits the ball, he's not getting enough hang time on it. And that is the biggest thing. So what would cause
that? Is that just like an angle thing? Is that just like a power thing, or like how do you get more hang time?
So part of it's your follow through, how much you follow through, in terms of like getting your foot all the way up and through and your full extension, because that's going to drive the ball higher in the air. And part of it is also how you're actually trying to kick the ball. So if he's trying to drive it for distance, he's giving up hang time in order to do that. And that was actually something that when I was playing, my special teams coaches told me to do, is that like I could hit it, 55, 60 yards with 4.7, 4.8 hang time, which again, that's pretty good hang time for that distance. But if you're hitting it 55, 60 yards in order to cover that, you're going to want like at least 5 seconds of hang time, preferably like 5.1 seconds of hang time.
Right.
That's
There's no
actually
use out kicking your coverage. You go look
right.
at what the Chiefs punter does that all the time.
Right, exactly. When I was
I
playing,
remember that was a big thing with Pre for everybody, for you and beyond, was like
oh, yeah,
he
yeah.
wanted to, hang time, fair catch every single time. You can never get a return on us, like very safe, conservative.
Yeah, and so one of the things to look at there is teams that tend to draft for speed. So back when I played, that was when Shane Leckler was playing with the Raiders, and the Raiders always drafted for speed, right?
Yep.
So they had the receivers, they had the DBs, all their guys were quick. Most of them busted out, but if you're a first round pick who's a bust, they don't get rid of you right away. They put you on special teams to see if you can actually still contribute to the team. So Leckler can just bomb it down the field because he's got dudes running like a 4.4, at gunner. So like it doesn't matter. He's going down the field. Vikings, when I played, were a very run first oriented offense, right? Like we're drafting linemen, we're drafting interior linebackers to stop the run. We're drafting blocking tight ends. And so those guys and their backups are generally who's going to be on your special teams. And so if your coverage guys aren't as quick getting down the field, now you have to sacrifice distance in order to maximize hang time. So that way your guys can actually get down the field and cover. So yeah, that's one of those like little small things where what teams choose to emphasize can show up in places you don't expect it to. And so I think depending on how the Vikings draft and who they have in coverage will determine, okay, do we stick with a guy who can potentially flip the field, even though it might make it tougher for us to cover it? Or are we going to try to go for someone who's going to give us a better chance at covering because we know we don't necessarily have guys who are fast enough, to get there in time?
Yeah. So this will be an interesting, like low stakes free agency thing with Trent Sherfield, who got in at gunner. And for my money was the best gunner on the team last year. Najee Thompson would be the first guy pretty much with a bullet, but he was hurt. So like if they bring back Trent Sherfield and it's just those two guys, those are two really good gunners. So I wonder if then they maybe want to go for something a little bit more aggressive. But I kind of want to reminisce with you a little bit about some of the old days, to see if there's any untold stories I can retch out of you. So that'll be next on Locked On Vikings. All right, everybody, we're back here with Chris Kluwe on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Chris, you played from, oh boy, whatever years, 2006 to 2012, all the years they had the side stripe.
12, close.
5 to 12. Okay, well, that was so basically all the side stripe years plus one, huh?
Yes, yeah, plus one.
Plus one. I call it the Pat Williams side stripe because it made that belly look so good.
Oh god, Pat Williams was the best, dude. He looked so slovenly.
Well, that stripe was not doing him any favors, man.
It was not funny.
But an unreal athlete.
Oh god, he was the fastest guy I've ever seen in the span of 3 to 4 yards. Like it was unbelievable how quick he was.
Yeah, one of my all-time favorites. So I don't know if you are familiar, but I'm going to plug it just because. So I have a Patreon page, and on that Patreon page, I have a 7-part documentary series on the entire history of the Minnesota Vikings. And that is how I introduced the first like true uniform change in franchise history, is that they just wanted to make Pat Williams look a little bit chunkier.
I believe it.
Yeah. So in those years, you were around for some interesting stuff. You were around for the chaos of 2005, would have been your rookie year, right? It was where you started.
So fun story there. I was the only rookie not invited to the Love Boat because no one knew who I was.
Nobody knew who you were.
Because I literally, I had just been claimed off waivers from Seattle. I just showed up to the team. And then, so I'll never forget it. My wife and I were we were renting a townhome, right? Because, I didn't know if I was going to be there for long term or not. So we're in the townhome and the local news comes on with Vikings, boat party. And
yeah, just going, who? What?
Right, and we're like, how come we don't get invited to the cool parties? and then more details come out. It's like, ooh, yeah, maybe it's good.
Yeah, right. Well, depends on how crazy you want to get. That makes me think, because that year, if Seattle had won the Super Bowl, you would have got a ring, yeah?
Yeah. Well, if they had kept me. So, and the funny thing was, Seattle was going to put me on practice squad. So they felt
really?
that I wasn't quite polished enough, right, to be the starter. They had a veteran, Leo Aragus, who was going to, they kept him, and I think they kept him through the year. And then that was his last year. But yeah, it was very much like they told me, hey, we're going to put you on practice squad. And I was on my way to put a down payment on an apartment when their ops guy called me and said, we need you to come back to the facility. The Vikings just claimed you off waivers. I was like, well, I'm
how it always goes, right?
Right. Glad you caught me before I put the deposit down, because that would have sucked.
So I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that went on before that too. Before you would have even gotten there, but that year was insane. And that was the first year the Wilfs even owned the team.
Yes.
And they bought it. And then all that stuff immediately happened, which I think is part of what led them to go out and find a guy with a reputation like Brad Childress's.
Right.
So you were there before him and after him. You can be nice if you can be as nice as you want to, but is it true? Is it all true?
So, what in terms of Brad Childress?
I'm leaving it vague on purpose. Yes, Brad Childress.
Brad Childress was, I think, an excellent judge of talent. The team did a very good job of identifying talent and putting it in good positions. Brad Childress was also probably one of the worst micromanaging bosses I have ever seen. Like, there's a reason why we had 12 men in the huddle coming out of a timeout in the NFC Championship game, and it was because it was chaos on the sidelines at all times, because Childress had to be the one making the decisions, and sometimes he didn't make the right decision. So yeah, it was
he would like control the sub, and then because he's pulled in so many different directions, someone's like, hey Brad, who's going in on this one? And then like a wire gets crossed there.
Right. Yeah. Like no one knows what's going on. And then, coach is like, okay, well, we got to get in for this package. No, we're doing this package. And then you end up, 12 guys on the field after time. So yeah, and that wasn't the only time that happened. Like there were multiple times where we'd be asking, hey, like, is the punt team going in? It's fourth and 4. It's like, what are we doing? Are we punting? Are we going for it? Are we punting? Are we going for it? And he's just kind of like, and then, all right, punt team. We've got like 10 seconds to get on the field to get the punt.
Now it's a fire drill. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like, okay, guess we're just going on one.
Turbo. Man, that year must've been fun though. And maybe even the subsequent year, you didn't win as much in 2010, but here's a question I've always had. How different was the vibe? Because it was kind of the same group of people, more or less, from 2009 to 2010. And so it gives you like the vibe in 2009, like you could tell, and it was very well broadcast. We all saw it on local news in Minnesota. And then in 2010, you didn't hear nearly as much. So was it truly that different with that different group of people? And like, is that just a testament to, the difference between winning and losing, or am I making too much of that?
Yeah, no, it definitely was different. And the thing that really stood out to me about that 2009 season was when Brett made that throw to Greg Lewis, I believe, in the back of the end zone.
The San Francisco, the week 3. Yeah.
That's where it really felt like, okay, like there's something going on here. Like we have a chance to win no matter what. Because normally, at least for my 5 years previous or 4 years previous, whatever it is, like we didn't make those throws. Like no shade on Brad Johnson and Gus Farad and
yeah, but that wouldn't be the moment. I feel like there's something to that, like that belief you have. Like we saw it all year this year with Sam Darnold and like those locker room speeches and everything. Like they bought it. They knew they could do it. And I wonder if after that Lions game debacle at the end of the season, that doubt crept in, and then the doubt is what all that needed to happen to just like undo everything that they had going on.
Yeah, it's and so you see analysts say like, oh, morale isn't a thing. Like, momentum isn't a thing.
Momentum isn't really,
yeah. Yeah, like it actually is a thing, because
we just don't know how to measure it. Which, right,
you can't, like how do you measure someone's mindset? Because
like we don't have a barometer for it, so we can't use it to like change a betting line or whatever, which is what a lot of those people are talking about. They're talking about like how that, what the odds should be or whatever, but like the human element, and football is a human game,
Yeah. And it's the difference between laying out for a pass that you're not sure you can catch versus just extending for it and not getting there. Right. Because even if you lay out, you may not necessarily get it, but at least you have a chance at getting it. And it felt like that 2009 year, when we took those chances, we were succeeding, right? Like we were making them happen. And then the 2010 year, it felt like, well, crap, guys are getting injured. It's like we're not really executing the way we were. Then the roof collapsed.
Yep.
That really kind of tied up the whole season in a bow.
Yeah, very symbolic of the like pressures something finally buckling under a lot of pressure.
Yep.
Well, so every time I've had the pleasure of having a couple of former players on the Locked On Vikings podcast, so it's something of a tradition now to ask the question. And if you don't have an answer to this, it's fine. I'll just cut this. Okay. But I would love to hear an untold story. Is there anything that happened, whether it's just a funny anecdote or a thing that you would love to talk about that has never been discussed before? I'm looking for an exclusive.
Yeah, exclusive. So I think I've talked about this, but it's been like really obscure on like either the Vikings subreddit or just like in passing to other people. And it's actually the story of when the roof collapsed, right? So the leading up to our game at TCF Bank Stadium, our grounds crew told us, oh yeah, we've got this chemical. It's gonna thaw the turf. Everything will be fine. Because up to that point, like TCF Bank Stadium had been under snow for like a month.
And for context, I was at that game where the Bears game where Favre got knocked out, right? That one.
Yeah, where Favre got knocked out.
I was in the stands. It was a great time. Home from college for Christmas. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We got the snowballs thrown at us. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. People were the one time that the Vikings scored, everybody threw snow up. It was super awesome. They lost like 40-6 or something.
I know. We got crushed. It was terrible. But yeah. So anyway, so in the week leading up to that game, like our ground crew's telling us, no, it's gonna be great. Like we got this chemical. It's gonna melt all the ice. Like the field's gonna be perfect. And then we walked out on Saturday to do our Saturday walkthrough at the stadium, and I actually got a whole bunch of heat at the time because I'm like, this field is a concrete, like this is an ice rink, like this is not safe, and a lot of the the Twitter people were picking it up, and I had Coach Frazier call me and be like, Chris, you got to stop talking about the field. I'm like, Coach, can you tell me as a former player
the beginning of a long tradition of you being told to stop talking?
But yeah, no, like I literally asked him, like, you're a former player, like, do you feel this is a safe surface for us to play on? He's like, Chris, I just need you to stop talking about the field.
You're right, but please shut up.
Right? And so what we learned when we got there was that apparently the chemical that was going to melt the ice and make the field perfect also caused second-degree burns when exposed to skin. And they didn't figure that out until Friday night. And so they had like these flamethrowers going, like desperately trying to melt the ice, and it's just
like they busted out the old ones from the Met, or
right? Like they had lines of flamethrowers going down the sidelines.
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
Okay, well, great. Well, the sidelines are going to be somewhat thawed, but the center of the field is still going to be asphalt. And yeah, sure enough, we come out Sunday and sideline in on the field was fine. Sidelines out, asphalt. Middle of the field between the hashes, asphalt.
And that's where Favre went down.
Yeah, and that's where Favre went down. You see him get slammed in, and there was no give in the ground. And that was the end of his career. That was also the reason why Hester's record touchdown return on my punt. So if you go back and watch the film, our left wing, Aaron Henderson. So he's the contained guy on the left side. The Bears double team him out of bounds, and you see him just kind of skid like all the way, like 8 yards out of bounds. And he's doing like the Wile E. Coyote run to try to get back on the field, and he's not going anywhere. So we have no contain on the sideline. and obviously, like, I'm trying to kick it out of bounds, and that part's on me. I couldn't get it out of bounds. But like Hester just comes right down the sideline, and there's no one there because Aaron
just waltzes
off the field.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so that was a fun time.
Tying because that was a record punt return.
Yeah,
because I'm remembering the Cromartie one from a couple years ago. That was a kick. That was a missed field goal. That was like
fun story on that one. Okay, so that was San Diego, right? It was going into halftime.
The 297 or 296 Adrian Peterson game also was that.
Yeah. So we had to do a hurry up field goal on that, and the refs didn't sub in the K ball, so we were using a quarterback ball, which wasn't broken in as well. which is why the kick was about 2 yards short, which is why
wow,
caught the ball and brought it back 109 yards.
Unbelievable. Insights you only get if you listen all the way to the end of a Locked On Vikings podcast. So thank you to the #everydayers that did so. And thank you so much for your time, Chris. This was great. I would love to talk to you again sometime. Stay safe over there in the post-apocalyptic hellscape that is Huntington Beach.
Yeah, it's the Florida of Southern California, so it's my best. But yeah,
I live about an hour away, so I've been there a bunch. But yeah,
yep, you know.
Yep. All right, Chris, thank you so much. If there's anything you want to plug, now would be the time as well.
I'm on Blue Sky at Chris Warcraft. That's about it. Skull Vikes.
Good enough. Thank you so much for listening to the Locked On Vikings podcast. Tomorrow, it is Town Hall Tuesday, so get in your questions or your hot takes. There are 2 Google Forms in the show notes in the description to this episode. If you have a hot take you would like to anonymously confess, I will read it on the show, and I'll tell you what I think about it, but I will protect your anonymity, or if you just have a question for me you want to ask, you can do that as well. Just scroll down and find it in the description here. I will have that for you tomorrow, and as always, Skull.